my fellow Africans, sympathizers, and presidents of the beautiful continent of Africa. For centuries, the global community stood idly as ecocentric imperialists, motivated by territorial colonialism, racism, cultural dominant, superialistic complex, and discriminatory segregation ransacked our continent, Africa. They brutalized our people, raped our mothers, murdered our sisters, and enslaved our ancestors in the name of colonization. They took what was ours and made it theirs as they enslaved our economy and destroy our historical identities. We did no wrong to them, but they did everything wrong to us. They left their homes and came into our land and took us captives. We did not go into their homes. We did not go into their lands. Though their homes are now built on the backs of our ancestors, they came into our land to colonize us. We did not go into the land to colonize them. We did not go into the land to rape their women and children or murder their ancestors. They came into our land, invaded our home, raped our women and children, captured our ancestors and enslaved them. They came and destroyed our society. They destroyed our stability. They destroyed our cultural identities. And they call us primitive savages. Yet, with all the sophisticated knowledge and brilliant technology, they were the ones who used brutality and barbarity to rape our 10 and 13-year-old children and sisters and mothers, not us. My fellow Africans, presidents of our continent, rape was wrong then. Rape is wrong now. Colonization was wrong then. Colonization is wrong now. Racism was wrong then. Racism is wrong now. Discriminatory segregation was wrong then. Discriminatory segregation is definitely wrong in this day and age. I say to you today, my fellow Africans, presidents of our continent, people of the global community, that despite your cultural background and nationality, slavery was wrong then. Slavery is absolutely wrong now. Those outrageous psychological abuses and physical assaults inflicted on our ancestors by Westerners were cruel and barbaric, and therefore they owe us an open apology. Consequently, calling on all African presidents to jointly promote Pan-Africanism and demand retribution, a total decolonization of Africa, and compensation for centuries of psychological abuse and physical violence against our ancestors and continent. As a start of century-long brutality, I'm asking every African president, every president of the continent of Africa, to jointly come together and write a petition to the United Nations demanding that every debt owed by any African country be waived. for century-long abuse against our ancestors and our continent. That every African country that is colonized be decolonized with immediate effect. That Africa be free of captive, of dues that does not promote Africanism, but continues to suppress the people of Africa. Every debt owed by African nation by former abusers of the continent of Africa should be totally credited to that nation for its restoration. Europeans or Westerners left their homeland, intruded into ours, invaded our provinces, and with ruthless, inconsiderate assaults, they murdered our people, killed our mothers, children, and our fathers, and enslaved our continent for decades. To date, not many African countries can count on one hand how many factories of our natural resources that is being manufactured within our country, within the continent of Africa. To date, not many African countries can stand on her own and provide adequately sufficient food for her family, for her people. Because our continent have been misled, abused, and tumbled upon. Presidents of Africa, I call on you to see how vigorously Westerners confiscated our belongings, took our heritage, destroyed our homes, and our African identities. They marginalized our community, destroyed our social identity. That everywhere a typical African or the black person walks, this generalization of social identity that is associated with the color that we bear follow us everywhere we go. They vigorously confiscated our belongings, took our heritage, destroyed our homes, our social identities as Africans. Their absolute disregard of our society and ancestors' lives, their continual racial segregation against us, their outrageous humiliation and institutional prejudice against us is totally disrespectful and unacceptable. In this day and age, African leaders cannot continue to bow down to other nations' leaders. You African leaders must stand up for Africans, must stand up so that the nations and the continent from which you are from will rise. Protect our natural resources. Come together as leaders of Africa. Talk among yourselves. Formulate strategies that will bring about development within Africa. Formulate a team that will discuss growth within Africa. Formulate a body that will bring about decolonization of Africa. We Africans demand that African leaders, that our presidents of every African nation stand up today, not tomorrow, for the future of Africa and Africans. Therefore, I, Charles Cecil Dennis III, is calling on our leaders to stand up for our rights and protect the rights of all Africans, regardless of what continent they are on. Africans and other nationalities are people who deserve to share the global community equally without being socially disconnected or stereotyped based on the color of their skin. Cultural identity is the diversity that must promote our coexistence and should never be based off of discrimination within the global community. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and compassion and respect, regardless of their nationality or the place of birth. So, to all European countries who abuse the dignity of Africans, who confiscated the properties of our belongings, who's confiscated our belongings, our property, who downplay our social identities, who devastated our lives, who destroyed our home, who invaded our land. You owe us an apology. Your generational generalization and abuse, colonialism, have brought our continent to suffer immensely. Therefore, when you give a, it is a 200,000, you have our people sharing, clapping as though to say you're doing something that is worth noted. No. For centuries, you abused the continent of Africa. For centuries, you took away the things that belong to us. For centuries, you undermine our economies. For centuries, you kill our people. For centuries, you rape our mothers and sisters. For centuries, you enslave our people. Therefore, everything that you took from us, that you're giving back to us piece by piece, we need it back in its totality. Africa must be respected. We are the second largest continent in the world. We are not second grade or second class or second or creation to God's creation. We are people just like you, just like any other person that walk the face of the earth. The abuse of Africans throughout the world must stop. Colonialism was wrong then. Colonialism is wrong now. Decolonize Africa. I am calling on all African leaders to summon yourself, get together, write a petition, decolonize Africa. 2019 should be the time, 2019, that should be your resolution, that Africa in its totality is decolonized. That Westerners who enslaved our people, who invaded our land, who took our belonging, who abused our women and children, our ancestors, publicly apologize for their evil, their cruelty towards Africans. It is sad, so sad, to see that as a boy, as a child growing up, to come to the realization that you are from a race that have been looked down upon. You are a part of a community that have been abused for so long, that have been marginalized, dehumanized within the community where everybody lives. Nevertheless, we walk, we talk and drink and talk with everybody. But we sing that what society have done to us, the suppression, those attributes, those attitudes must come to an end. We can't continue to live like this. And we all passing around pretending like nothing ever happened. It did happen. Point of correction, it happened. Our continent was abused. That happened. Our people were colonized. That happened. Our people are now being controlled within our own continent. African leaders have to ask permission from other country to be able to build or do things that needs to be done in Africa. That is dead wrong, and it needs to come to an end. Therefore, I'm calling on all African leaders. Approach the United Nations. Do whatever it is that you leaders do, but decolonize Africa. Bring about our dignity, bring about our sovereignty. Let Africa be ruled by Africans in its totality. Thank you.